and said to her, Well, alas thee, king's daughter, thou weepest so that even a stone would show pity. She looked around to the side from whence the voice came and saw a frog, stretching forth its thick, ugly head from the water. Ah, old water splasher, is it thou? She said. I am weeping for my golden ball, which has fallen into the well. Be quiet and do not weep, answered the frog. I can help thee, but what wilt thou give me if I bring thy plaything up again? Whatever thou wilt have, dear frog, said she, my clothes, my pearls and jewels, and even the golden crown which I am wearing. The frog answered, I do not care for thy clothes, thy pearls and jewels, or thy golden crown, but if thou wilt love me, and eat off thy little golden plate, and drink out of thy little cup, and sleep in thy little bed, if thou wilt promise me this, I will go down below, and bring thee thy golden ball up again. Oh, she said, I promise thee all those wishes, if thou wilt but bring me back my ball again. She, however, thought, how the silly frog does talk. He lives in the water with the other frogs and croaks, and can be no companion to any human being. But the frog, when he had received this promise, put his head into the water and sank down, and in a short while came swimming up again with the ball in his mouth, and threw it on the grass. The king's daughter was delighted to see her pretty plaything once more, and picked it up and ran away with it. Wait, wait, said the frog, take me with thee. I can't run as thou canst. But what did it avail him to scream his croak after as loudly as he could? She did not listen to it, but ran home and soon forgot the poor frog, who was forced to go back into his well again. The next day, when she had seated herself at the table with the king and all the courtiers, and was eating from her little golden plate, something came creeping, splish, splash, splish, splash, up the marble staircase, and when it had got to the top, it knocked at the door and cried, Princess, young princess, open the door for me. She ran to see who was outside, but when she opened the door, there sat the frog in front of it. Then she slammed the door to it, in great haste, sat down to get dinner again, and was quite frightened. The king saw plainly that her heart was beating violently, and said, My child, what art thou so afraid of? Is there perchance a giant outside who wants to carry thee away? Ah, no, replied she, it is no giant, but a disgusting frog. What does a frog want with thee? Ah, dear father, yesterday as I was in the forest, sitting by the well, playing, my golden ball fell into the water, and because I cried so, the frog brought it out again for me, and because he so insisted, I promised him he should be my companion, but I never thought he would be able to come out of his water, and now he is outside there and wants to come in to me. In the meantime, it knocked a second time and cried, Princess, young princess, open the door for me. Dost thou not know what thou saidst to me yesterday by the cool waters of the fountain? Princess, young princess, open the door for me. Then said the king, That which thou said promised must thou perform. Go and let him in. She went and opened the door, and the frog hopped in and followed her, step by step, to her chair. There he sat still and cried, Lift me up beside thee. She delayed until at last the king commanded her to do it. When the frog was once on the chair, he wanted to be on the table, and when he was on the table, he said, Now push thy little golden plate near to me, that we may eat together. She did this, but it was easy to see that she did not do it willingly. The he said, I have eaten and am satisfied. Now I am tired. Carry me into thy little room and make thy little silken bed ready, and we will both lie down and go to sleep. The king's daughter began to cry, for she was afraid of the gold frog which she did not like to touch, and which was now to sleep in her pretty, clean little bed. But the king grew angry and said, He who helped thee when thou wert in trouble ought not afterwards be despised by thee. So she took hold of the frog with 2 fingers, carried him upstairs, and put him in a corner. But when she was in bed, he crept to her and said, I am tired. I want to sleep as well as thou. Lift me up, or I will tell thy father. Then she was terribly angry and took him up and threw him with all her might against the wall. Now thou wilt be quiet, odious frog, said she. But when he fell down, he was no frog, but a king's son with beautiful, kind eyes. He, by her father's will, was now her dear companion and husband. Then he told her how he had been bewitched by a wicked witch, and how no one could have delivered him from the well but herself, and that tomorrow they would go together into his kingdom. Then they went to sleep, and next morning, when the sun awoke them, a carriage came driving up with 8 white horses, which had white ostrich feathers on their head, and were harnessed with golden chains, and behind stood the young king's servant, Faithful Henry. Faithful Henry had been so unhappy when his master was changed into a frog that he had caused 3 iron bands to be laid round his heart, lest it should burst with grief and sadness. The carriage was to conduct the young king into his kingdom. Faithful Henry helped them both in, and placed himself behind again, and was full of joy because of his deliverance. And when they had driven a part of the way, the king's son heard a cracking behind him as if something had broken. So he turned round and cried, Henry, the carriage is breaking. No, master, it is not the carriage. It is a band from my heart, which was put there in my great pain when you were a frog and imprisoned in the well. Again and once again, while they were on their way, something cracked. And each time the king's son thought the carriage was breaking, but it was only the bands, which were springing from the heart of Faithful Henry, because his master was set free and was happy. take anything away from there. We will set it beneath the altar and not touch it until we are ready in need of it." So the pot was placed in safety, but it was not long before the cat had a great yearning for it and said to the mouse, "I want to tell you something, little mouse. My cousin has brought a little son into the world and has asked me to be godmother. He is white with brown spots, and I am to hold him over the front of the christening. Let me go out today. You look after the house by yourself." "Yes, yes," answered the mouse. "By all means go, and if you get anything very good, think of me. I should like a drop of sweet red christening wine, too." All this, however, was untrue. The cat had no cousin, and had not been asked to be godmother. She went straight to the church and stole the pot of fat, began to lick at it, and licked the top of the fat off. Then she took a walk upon the roofs of the town, looked out for opportunities, and then stretched herself into the sun and licked her lips whenever she thought of the pot of fat, and not until it was evening did she return home. "Well, here you are again," said the mouse. "No doubt you have had a merry day." "All went off well," answered the cat. What name did they give the child?" "Top off," said the cat quite coolly. "Top off," cried the mouse. "That is a very odd and uncommon name. Is it an unusual one in your family?" "What does it signify?" said the cat. "It is no worse than Crumb Stealer, as your godchildren are called." Before long the cat was seized by another fit of longing. She said to the mouse, "You must do me a favor, and once more manage the house for a day alone. I am again asked to be godmother, and as the child has a white ring round its neck, I cannot refuse." The good mouse consented, but the cat crept behind the town walls to the church and devoured half the pot of fat. "Nothing ever seems so good as what one keeps to oneself," she said, and was quite satisfied with her day's work. When she went home, the mouse inquired, "And what was this child's christened?" "Half done," answered the cat. "Half done? What are you saying? I've never heard the name in my life. I'll wager anything it is not in the calendar." The cat's mouth soon began to water for some more licking. "All good things go in threes," said she. "I am asked to stand godmother again. The child is quite black, only has white paws, but with that exception, it has not a single white hair on its whole body. This only happens once every few years. You will let me go, won't you?" "Top off, half done," answered the mouse. "They are such odd names. They make me very thoughtful." "You sit at home," said the cat, "in your dark gray fur coat and long tail, and are filled with fancies. That's because you do not go out in the daytime." During the cat's absence, the mouse cleaned the house and put it in order, but the greedy cat entirely emptied the pot of fat. "When everything is eaten up, one has some peace," said she to herself, and well filled and fat, she did not return home till night. The mouse at once asked what name had been given to the third child. "It will not please you more than the other," said the cat. "He is called All Gone." "All Gone," cried the mouse. "That is the most suspicious name of all. I have never seen it in print. All Gone, what can that mean?" And she shook her head, curled herself up, and lay down to sleep. From this time forth, no one invited the cat to be godmother. But when the winter had come and there was no longer anything to be found outside, the mouse thought of the provision and said, "Come, cat, we will go to our pot of fat, which we have stored up for ourselves. We shall enjoy that." "Yes," answered the cat, "you will enjoy it as much as you would enjoy sticking that dainty tongue of yours out of the window." They set out on their way, but when they arrived, the pot of fat certainly was still in its place, but it was empty. "Alas," said the mouse, "now I see what's happened. Now it comes comes to light. You are a true friend. You have devoured all when you were standing godmother. First top off, then half done, then will you hold your tongue, cried the cat. One word more and I will eat you too. All gone was already on the poor mouse's lips. Scarcely had she spoken it before the cat sprang on her, seized her, and swallowed her down. Verily, that is the way of the world. What an evil little cat. This last story I'm going to read today is called The Golden Goose. The Golden Goose. The Golden Goose, Golden Goose, Golden Goose, Goose, Goose. I like that word, goose. The Golden Goose. There was a man who had 3 sons, the youngest of whom was called Dummling, and was despised, mocked, and put down on every occasion. It happened that the eldest wanted to go into the forest to hew wood, and before he went his mother gave him a beautiful sweet cake and a bottle of wine in order that he might not suffer from hunger or thirst. When he entered the forest, there met him a little gray-haired man, who bade him good day and said, "Do give me a piece of cake out of your pocket, and let me have a draught of your wine. I am so hungry and thirsty." But the prudent youth answered, "If I give you my cake and wine, I shall have none for myself. Be off with you." And he left the little man standing and went on. But when he began to hew down a tree, it was not long before he made a false stroke, and the axe cut him in the arm, so that he had to go home and have it bound up. And this was the little gray man's doing. After this, the second son went into the forest, and his mother gave him, like the eldest, a cake and a bottle of wine. The little old gray man met him likewise and asked him for a piece of cake and a drink of wine. But the second son too said with much reason, "What I give you will be taken away from myself. Be off." And he left the little man standing and went on. His punishment, however, was not delayed. When he had made a few strokes at the tree, and he struck himself in the leg, so that he had to be carried home. Then Dummling said, "Father, do let me go and cut wood." The father answered, "Your brothers have hurt themselves with it. Leave it alone. You do not understand anything about it." But Dummling begged so long that at last he said, "Just go then. You will get wiser by hurting yourself." His mother gave him a cake made with water and baked in the cinders, and with it a bottle of sour beer. When he came to the forest, the little gray man met him likewise, and greeting him said, "Give me a piece of your cake and a drink out of your bottle." "I am so hungry and thirsty," Dummling answered. "I only have cinder cake and sour beer. If that pleases you, we will sit down and eat." So they sat down, and when Dummling pulled out his cinder cake, it was a fine sweet cake, and the sour beer had become good wine. So they ate and drank, and after that the little man said, "Since you have a good heart and are willing to divide what you have, I will give you good luck." stands an old tree, cut it down, and you will find something at the roots." Then the little man took leave of him. Dumpling went and cut down the tree, and when it fell, there was a goose sitting in the roots with the feathers of pure gold. He lifted her up and, taking her with him, went in where he thought he would stay the night. Now the host had 3 daughters who saw the goose and were curious to know what such a wonderful bird might be, and would have liked to have one of its golden feathers. The eldest thought, "I shall soon find an opportunity of pulling out a feather," and as soon as Dumpling had gone out, she seized the goose by the wing, and her finger and hand remained sticking fast to it. The second came soon afterwards, thinking only of how she might get a feather for herself, but when she scarcely touched her sister, then she was held fast. At last the third also came with the like intent, and the others screamed out, "Keep away, for goodness sake, keep away!" But she did not understand why she was to keep away. The others are there, she thought. "I may as well be there too," and ran to them. But as soon as she had touched her sisters, she remained sticking fast to her. So they had to spend the night with the goose. The next morning, Dumpling took the goose under his arm and set out without troubling himself about the 3 girls who were hanging on to it. They were obliged to run after him continually, now left, now right, just as he was inclined to go. In the middle of the fields, the parson met them, and when he saw the procession, he said, "For shame, you good-for-nothing girls! Why are you running across the fields after this young man? Is that seemly?" At the same time, he seized the youngest by the hand in order to pull her away, but as soon as he touched her, he likewise stuck fast, and was himself obliged to run behind. Before long, the sexton came by and saw his master, the parson, running behind 3 girls. He was astonished at this and called out, "Ah, your reverence, whither away so quickly? Do not forget that we have a christening today." And running after him, he took him by the sleeve, but was also held fast to it. Whilst the 5 were trotting thus one behind the other, 2 laborers came with their hoes from the fields. The parson called out to them and begged that they would set him and the sexton free. But they had scarcely touched the sexton when they held fast, and now there were 7 of them running behind Dumpling and the goose. Soon afterwards he came to a city where a king ruled, who had a daughter who was so serious that no one could make her laugh. So he had put forth a decree that whosoever should be able to make her laugh should marry her. When Dumpling heard this, he went with his goose and all her train before the king's daughter, and as soon as she saw the 7 people running on and on, one behind the other, she began to laugh quite loudly, and as if she would never leave off. Thereupon Dumpling asked to have her for his wife, and the wedding was celebrated. After the king's death,